I was eating a dog and walking a cheese sandwich up a hill.
It sounds like a bi-curious hobbit.
Everyone gets a cock ring that comes to California. That's how it works.
Very well said. What can we say? And welcome to the Neutral Cider Hotel, where the linen smells of fresh apples, the drains smell of dirty apples, and where we are so dedicated to cider that instead of having a night porter, we have a night West Country styler. Yes, this is the place to come to for all talk cider. Joining me as ever on this inane and irreverent and quite possibly slightly irrelevant journey into cider is the wonderful Mr. Grant Hutchison. Grant, my dear friend, I have a quick question for you.
Yes,
What is the strangest place you've ever drunk cider?
Ooh. Yeah, you could have pre-warned me about that question.
Surprise!
Well, this is I like to keep things on the hoof. Got to keep you snappy. Okay, I'm going to come back to you, and I'm going to ask our other eminent cider expert and hopefully more vocal member of the trio, Mr. Martyn Goodwin-Sharman. What's the strangest place you've ever drunk some cider?
Honestly, I probably on a roundabout in a park in Weybridge, but I'm gonna say in an enclosure with a dolphin horse down in Newquay.
The dolphin horse.
Yeah, I believe our listeners, our regular listeners, will know the reference to that.
The dolphin horse.
You didn't even fucking know. What chance
As the owner-creator of said dolphin horse, I momentarily forgot there about the Frankenstein's devilish beast that I created the other week. So thank you for reminding me, Martyn. I actually quite like the sound of drinking on the roundabout. And for our American listeners, both of them, a roundabout is a traffic circle. I think you don't really have so many of those over there.
You just have them, right?
Opposite. I'm talking about the playground, like a actual roundabout, like the one where
I see.
basically just it's just a wheel that you're on.
So the theory I thought you literally meant in the middle of a roundabout.
No. The theory is if you spin when you're drinking alcohol, I was told you got drunk quicker. So as a teenager, obviously it needs to be just faster. So I'd say that's the weirdest, but it's also probably the saddest part of my life.
How old were you? Was this like
28? So it's that was like 14, 15, which is not. I'm not advising it, but I don't know. I'm pinned in a corner here, guys. Change the subject.
Sorry, it's Grant's turn to now have blagged and made up an answer as to where is the strangest place that he has indeed drunk some cider. Let's see if has he come up with something.
Probably on the top of a Scottish mountain with a cheese and pickle sandwich and a dog. I wasn't eating the dog; I was just with the dog.
The dog was in the sandwich. That's. I thought you were vegan.
Well, the dog.
Actually, even the cheese component. These are pre-vegan days.
No, you get vegan cheese, but yeah, it was pre-vegan days.
Okay.
I was eating a dog. Yeah.
It's not really cheese, though, is it?
No, it's not. Dairy. No, we're not going to talk about vegan cheese on this podcast. But I was eating a dog and walking a cheese sandwich up a hill. Good times. What about you, Gabe? Gabe, what about you? You must have had cider in pretty weird places. What are you going to say? Your bed or something?
No. I mean, yes, but no. A particularly memorable one actually was on a little island off the west coast of Ireland, one of the Aran Islands, which was where Father Ted was supposedly set. Craggy Island, and it was at a it was called Dunengus. It's like a sort of 2,000 or 3,000 year old sort of Bronze Age site on the edge of a cliff, and it was the end of the day, and all of the sort of day trippers to the island had gone. I was staying overnight, and literally just as I was going there, the last other person came out, and they facing west out to the Atlantic. It was a beautiful sunny day, most amazing kind of sunset, and it was me and a bottle of it was a friend's bottle conditioned cider. I think it was Ellis Bitter. I think it had been whiskey. It was a whiskey cask matured. And it was just a beautiful moment, right up until the point that, and it's funny, but maybe dogs or something, there's something to do with dogs and cider, that this like border collie just turned up out of nowhere and proceeded to not quite try and jump off the edge of this cliff, but it got very, very close to the edge. And what turned from a beautiful moment turned into I got very, very anxious all of a sudden. Very anxious. We're talking like 100-meter cliff here as well. And
that sounds like a Father Ted episode.
Well, yeah, it does. So that was particularly memorable, certainly, I would say. So, So for anybody, you see, cider is the soundtrack to all of the world's great occasions, whilst eating a dog, getting paranoid on a cliff face, or getting very, very drunk in a children's park. The joy of cider, everybody.
Send us your strangest places you've had cider, and we'll read them out next week on the podcast.
That was said with the charisma of a dog that had died jumping off a cliff, Grant. That was so...
So, listeners, next week we'll read out your strangest places I've drunk cider.
Oh, and are we going to send that to our Instagram or Twitter? So I believe, what are our handles, guys?
Oh yeah, we've got handles.
It's Neutral Cider Hotel on Instagram. I knew that, Martyn.
Oh,
come on.
Yeah, no, so that's right. And I'm the old man scrolling on my phone now. On Twitter, it is, because Neutral Cider Hotel is too long, it's Neutral Cider Pod, I believe. Maybe not. Come on.
Neutral Cider Pod. You got it.
There, perfect. If you send that into Neutral Cider Pod on Twitter, we'll try fucking read it with some enthusiasm, won't we, boys?
I will not.
So welcome, everybody, to the Neutral Cider Hotel. As I said, the place for all the irreverent and irrelevant cider fun. Come and join us as we go down the cider rabbit hole. But now it's time for the news. And so it's out with the old and in with the news. What have we got this week? Grant, what's rocking your cider world at the moment?
I wouldn't say it's rocking my cider world, but I have, with the recent pandemic situation that's going on, there's been a lot of chat about excess apples in orchards and what's going to happen with them. So I saw a few chats on Twitter from cider makers about what they could do with it, or fruit growers, and saw an interesting one from Albert from Ross on Wye, who suggested that we could increase the minimum juice content that is allowed in cider. I guess this might be a time for a horse.
Honk, honk.
Yeah, right.
Honk, honk.
Nobody can see
that's the self-made boost of joy. Sorry, everybody listening. So there's points like this where we endeavour to have some animal noise that indicates that there is something technical to be talked about. And in this case, minimum juice content, which is kind of what it says. It is the minimum amount of apple juice that needs to be within a cider in order for it to be constituted as a cider in that particular country. And this might sound as a little bit of a bizarre question. Isn't cider just made from apple juice? And the answer to that is no. In many countries, you are allowed to dilute your cider with potentially quite a large amount of cider. And in the UK, the minimum juice content is 35%. That's right. Essentially, 2/3 of your cider could be made of water. That is not a good thing, I would suggest.
That is a woman showing disgust.
I thought you were interrupting with like, oh, that's a bit too technical. I was like, he's so basic there. He's doing really nice.
That was Disgust brackets women on my my sound effect board. I was showing Disgust at that ridiculous low level of juice content in the UK.
So just for reference, that wasn't a small animal upset at the possibility of becoming veal. That was a woman, not an upset cow baby calf, a calf.
An upset cow baby.
I don't have that sound on my phone, actually. It doesn't have an upset cow baby on here. There is pee.
That'll be for our next round. When someone
is total piss.
Yeah, when someone's taking the piss in the interview, we'll just cut them off with that.
It's really long. Oh, there we go. So that I thought was an interesting way of tackling this problem of excess fruit. I don't imagine it's going to happen because it's quite a large. It would involve a lot of change for a lot of cider makers, and generally a lot of big cider makers who would probably just squash the idea before it got any legs to become anything. But because I think that's probably an important point, that most of the ciders we would drink, that wouldn't be an issue. They're full juice. Anything they have added to them is not there for economic reasons to save money or anything. It's to impart flavour or an interesting way of trying something different out. So I guess that minimum juice content, changing that would affect big players, and that's just not going to happen, is it? So
yeah, essentially they're the ones that have got the ear of the government when it comes to it, isn't it? You can't lobby with sort of 5 small independent cider makers. But with that amount of fruit not being picked and going to waste, what would the if you were to utilize all of it, say, what would the sort of labor be? Would we need to get people in like we did at the start of the pandemic, where it was like Pick for Britain and they were flying people in from Bulgaria to desperately pick stuff? Like, it wasn't even like a question of Brexit immigration or anything like that. It was like, we just need people to do this job. Like, have we even got the people signed up to do that job? Do you know what I mean?
Well, it doesn't really. It's not really impacted because we are talking about orchards predominantly in the west, in the southwest of England, which are tannic bittersweet apples specifically grown for making cider, and they're not handpicked. They would be machine harvested. So it's really highly mechanized. There really are a few laborers that are necessitated in order to undertake that harvesting process. So it doesn't actually make much of a difference. So it's just a case of, apple growers are going to have to leave fruit on the floor quite probably, which, some people are saying that that's all right because it'll be, good to add nutrients. I think it might acidify the ground, which is probably not such a good thing. Another option or opportunity is around facilitating small and very small cider makers to grow into medium-sized cider makers through a change in the taxation system, to have a progressive duty system whereby cider makers pay a half rate of duty as they, as a up to a certain volume to facilitate their growth. This is what beers had since 2002, and it's been a massive contributory factor into small breweries' growth within the UK. Thousands of breweries have popped up in the last 18 years, with this being one of those sort of major factors for it. So to facilitate a smaller cider maker, because at the moment, if you make less than 7,000 litres, you pay no duty. If you make 7,001 litres, you pay a full rate of duty. The biggest cider makers do it. And obviously the smaller producers don't have the economies of scale, and to grow is a really, really expensive thing. So that's something that is on the agenda of cider organisations, including the National Association of Cider Makers, and it is part of their lobbying strategy. It's just that, so I gather, there are some other matters that the government is trying to deal with at the moment that maybe
Really?
just sneak above introducing a progressive cider tax for cider. So we have to wait possibly for a little bit.
Well, also, you're talking about the apples essentially not getting utilized. So if they did all get utilized and you don't need the labor, it's all ready to go. If the pubs aren't there...
Well, exactly, yeah.
we just create an industry where everyone's selling cider and we just crash the price of it. We have like a cider depression and the podcast dies.
But the point is that, is it not with the 7,000 litre thing, is that you wouldn't necessarily need to sell it all because you're not even allowed to have 7,000 litres, right? Am I right, Gabe?
I'll have to say that again, sorry.
So as a cider maker, you're only allowed to actually have 7,000 litres on site. So if they increased that and you were allowed 15,000, it doesn't mean that you have to then sell 15,000 litres this year or from this harvest. It just means that you can have it on your site. So it's, I guess it's just use the apples now. It doesn't mean sell that cider straight away. You could have it sitting there maturing for however long you want, or
It is one of the advantages of cider, let's say, over beer. There are a few of them, but from an economic point of view, but you are able to hang on to and mature your cider over a period of time, as many cider makers have done. The beer doesn't have to, the cider doesn't have to be fresh like a beer would be, but the plain fact is the reason why there is a huge surplus of unwanted apples is because cider makers have not been able to sell anything approaching the normal amount that they would this year. As a result, their tanks, many of their tanks are full. There physically is not space for the juice to go into. It's actually for certain varieties, I think it's quite a good harvest this year. Again, it just comes back to the fundamental challenge around cider is that you make it like wine, but cider doesn't have the value that wine does in terms of price point in the market, and yet it doesn't have the volume of beer. So it sits in the middle and is a little bit sort of stymied both ways. So yeah, cider's being particularly hard hit at the moment.
So the message is drink more cider. Is that correct?
Drink more cider, ladies and gentlemen. That is it.
We can do that.
We can do that. All right. Also in the news, I saw a piece today about the launch of a brand new study in the USA with $500,000 of funding over 4 years to do research into the language and stylization of cider. It's one of the great challenges. One of the great challenges is that, beers, wines, and spirits have very long-standing, and well-developed and well-known lexicon to understand why, how and why a different drink tastes differently, and what the signifiers of those different types and styles are, so that the trade can sell it with some authority, and that the consumer can buy with some knowledge and understanding. And cider is definitely a very long way away from that yet. So it's really good to see that funding has been sought and approved to try and remedy that situation. Yes, in a US context, maybe I'll drop them an email to see if there's an opportunity for a bit of an international outlook on there. So just thought that was something positive to try and raise, that cider is very belatedly getting to the table in terms of trying to give the consumer more information.
I mean, they need to start, first of all, there are 2 spellings for cider. I mean, that's a pretty basic point to say, right, okay, we stick with one. So we use the one with the I or the Y, like we can't even decide on one spelling of the core product.
No, hang on. I'm not going to have words. I'm not going to have words that have an I and a Y spelling be knocked down. As a Martyn with a Y, we should have the freedom to bounce between. I'm not fucking around with this.
I really put my foot in it, didn't I?
I'm also Cornish where they use it.
Oh, shite.
Cider. Are you drinking cider? Gabe, with this couple of £1,000 of research, can you tell me if my cider is cold or fyzzy?
I do believe that it is, as it happens, yes.
Mine right now is definitely cold and fyzzy cider. That just sounds like I'm having a fucking stroke. That's not the news. I've just derailed it. I'm really sorry, guys. But no, go on. To be honest, I think having two spellings of it doesn't really matter. In the same way that like there are subcategories of everything, and in beer, and even just country-wise, having say beer and beer, and it's spelt differently, you get the message and it says it of a place. We just need to define
what that is, though.
With the Y, that to me says old Cornish scrumpy crap. If I ever see a Y on a bottle, I wouldn't buy it.
That's to you. This is the point, isn't it? It's like it means that to you, but it doesn't necessarily mean it universally.
Fallen into the trap, haven't I? I've judged a cider by the way.
Those £2,000 are going to be so well spent sorting this shit out.
There is a train of thought that cider with a Y actually pertains historically to the best, the finest drink, like the first press that was going to come off to go up to the big house. That was the best stuff, and that the sort of the second pressings or with the lesser kind of fruit, the cider with an I. That was what was sort of, given to the labourers and to the peasants. Personally, I don't agree with that, because
with Martyn's, they flipped that round.
Obviously. Oh, I see what you did there.
It sounds like the crap makers, though, have just adopted that. But I will say, do Starvecrow use a Y on their cider? I believe they do on the black label, don't they? If I remember correctly. And that's lovely. So maybe maybe the Y is good, Grant, and you're a dick.
You would say that, Martyn.
Martyn. Let me.
No, I have just checked, and indeed, the Starvecrow black label is cider with a Y. So that
I don't
nothing,
have a problem
obviously.
with cider with a Y. It's not that I've got something against the letter Y. I'm just
sounds like you brought it up. That's all I'm saying.
I'm saying a good starting point for this program would be, okay, which one are we going to use? Let's figure that out, and then we'll move on to.
Well, I'm going to suggest that hopefully the assistant professors from the universities of Virginia Tech and of Cornell are not listening to this podcast right now, because actually we do have something, or I do certainly have something positive to contribute, other than whether Martyn should be spelled with a Y or an I. So we'll see how that unfolds over time, and hopefully they'll give us a little bit of their £2,000. But there is more interesting and probably more topical news happening at the moment.
So I have some news from my part of the world. It's around my partaking in Salford Beer Festival, virtual beer festival in November. I'm going to do a cider tasting at that, a cider music evening. I have yet to really figure out what one of those is, but it's going to be great fun. I'm doing it on Zoom, kind of like the Manchester cider clubs that have been happening. If anyone's been at one of those, it's going to be hosted by a lady called Charlie, who's the Lady Sybil on social media. I don't know if you guys have seen her or know of her.
I've not.
I have seen. Yes,
a writer, blogger, all things food, drink, health, feminism. They've taken this from her blog. So this is how she would describe herself. And we're going to have a good selection of ciders. We've got, it's probably sold out by now, guys, just so you know. Don't bother trying to buy tickets.
Trying to book my ticket right now, but it's done.
You probably should. You probably should. So we've got, we're going to drink Little Pomona table cider, Pomologic Björk, Ancho. I think we're having the Hereford Gold and the Rosé. We're having Eve's Albie Hill, Caledonian cider, Isla Cask, and Ross on Y Perry. And I'm not sure which one. Flaky Bark, maybe. I don't think it's a single variety. I think it's a blend. But those are the 6 ciders that we're having, and we'll be probably pairing them with some music and having a chat about music and cider, and just generally having a nice drink and a fun time. So
that's a pretty impressive lineup.
I will say, Ross on what was that? Ross on what?
Here
he is. just a subtle little joke for the listener at home. Is there a website that they can check that out on, Grant?
Yeah, thanks for calling me handsome again. It's www.salfordbeerfest.com.
And you can help out the SEO by searching for Salford Beer Fest and the word cider with a Y, just to get it out there.
Grant with a Y. Grant.
You're a grunt.
Granty.
Rupert Granty.
Gabe, Granty, and Yarton. I will say, related to it, I once worked with at this rubbish cocktail bar, and this they were doing tips for all the staff, and they wrote a little bit on paper of the name to share them out. And this girl, I'll leave her nameless, she said, "Oh, Martin," and I said, "Yes," with a Y, and she wrote Myartin, which I've never seen before.
Martyn.
I will say it looked proper Gaelic, and because I was ginger looking at it, I was like, I could see how you've come to this assumed spelling of the Cornish name.
Sounds like a character out of a Daphne du Maurier novel or something from Jamaica Inn.
And if,
It sounds like a bi-curious hobbit.
So this week we have a bit of a legend joining us in the studio here, the Wizard of Herefordshire, arguably, allegedly, dubiously, one of the world's best cider makers. It's the man, it's the legend. It's Mr. Tom Oliver, everyone. Woo!
Good evening.
How is Oakle pictured? With a Y, no less, not an I. Isn't
It is much like, for those of you who like to spell cider with a Y, it's wrong.
yes.
We've just been discussing that, and as a Martin with
okay.
a Y, Tom, I actually said it was shit, but it somehow turned just into a bullying campaign from someone who is a missing letter from their surname. So.
Well,
You did say he was very handsome, though.
well, that's a good opening gambit. Good evening, everyone. You're all looking
Hi,
very
Mr.
slick
Oliver.
and professional now.
It's
Yep, sounding
the
as
best
such.
part of a podcast is the way that we look, obviously. It's the best thing we got going for it. And how is the harvest, Mr. Oliver?
I would say it's going well, but that's because it's been sunny and dry for the most part, and that's all about to change tomorrow. So speak to me tomorrow night, and I may be a little more sanguine about it. But so far, so good. Some nice fruit, some good pears coming in, and a lot of pears, which is great. I'm optimistic.
Super. Now, for those within, the ardent cider fans amongst us, there's, people will know who you are. You are known and regarded through the industry. But let's say for the majority of the population who haven't got a clue who you are, give us the briefest of brief intros as to who is Tom Oliver.
Tom Oliver is a cider maker who lives and works in Oakle Pitchard in Herefordshire on the family farm, and he's been managing to create a business over the last 22 years of making and selling cider, and he loves doing it, but he loves it even more when people like what he makes.
Amazing. And we especially like it when our guests talk about themselves in the third person on this show. That adds a certain gravitas to the occasion.
Is it just because my use of the English language is so appalling, I hadn't realized that I was speaking about myself in the third person?
You're making us look great. You're making us look great.
Yeah. You are welcome back anytime, sir. Anytime.
To be honest, Grant, I didn't think I was that bad. But anyway.
I will say, I hope that's indicative of the whole thing. And just after about half hour of talking about single varieties, it gets the end and you're still talking in third person.
As if you're a peer.
Rotten from the inside out.
Oh dear. Right.
So we are talking varieties this evening.
Are we? Okay. Well done.
I think that was the plan.
Yeah. Did you deliberately ask someone to come on and talk about single varieties who thinks that the ultimate art of cider making is blending?
But that's a good point that no one would initially know. Do you know what I mean? So you learn that from hearing that from you about the benefits of the single variety. Spoiler alert for this whole interview. But the single variety, and that those elements come together to bring harmony to a blend rather than just put it all in a fucking pot and hope it works.
I suppose it's a case of not necessarily about whether, a single variety versus blend, but the fact that there are individual varieties of apple and pear that are grown historically to make these wonderful drinks, and they each have their own flavors.
I thought I'd been brought on to talk about the single varieties.
No, you're the audience.
This is all just a vehicle for Gabe's book. So it doesn't matter what we say. Oh, there it is. He's never far from a copy.
No. Are we still promoting the first book? Not the next one. Yeah.
No, we're still promoting Ciderology by Gabe Cook. Painfully still available, all several thousand copies left. But if nothing else, dear listener, it's worth purchasing a copy because you get to see Mr. Oliver's beautiful visage within this book, because he is the featured cider maker from the three counties of Gloucestershire. Sorry, you can take the boy out of dimmer. Out of Gloucestershire, Herefordshire, and Worcestershire, and you get to learn a little bit more about what it's all about. So, Ciderology available forever, quite possibly. So, Tom, we're talking varieties, cider apple varieties. We know that the majority of ciders in the UK and probably around the world are made with not just a single apple variety, but made with blends of different types of apples. Why do cider makers normally do that? Why do you do that?
So I think the ultimate use of individual varieties to create a blend is because you're going to get something with better taste, better character, a better mouthfeel, better composition, better drinkability, and overall you're going to be giving people a better experience, I feel.
Amazing. And, as somebody who's been making cider a long time, would it be true to say that the understanding the nature and the properties of these varieties individually is really important before you can, start to undertake these more sort of complex blends? Does it, even if the blend is the ultimate goal, is understanding what these individual apple varieties really important?
Yeah, I think given that we're talking about cider made from apples and apples being the primary, if not the only ingredient, I think the more you can understand about your raw material in whatever you're doing, the better off you are. But certainly for me, I grew up using just traditional bittersweet cider apples. And therefore, I always looked to taste them, see what they were like each year. Maybe sometimes you'd think, I think this one may be a bit sweeter. Maybe the acid's a bit more to the fore. Maybe this tastes more tannic than it did previously. But every year, they'll always be a little bit different. The season will be different. The prevailing weather conditions, the amount of sun, the amount of rain, everything, it will change the nature of the individual variety every year. But ultimately, each variety does have its own unique characteristics, and it's those characteristics that you're using each year to build the drinks that you're going to make and to create your blends. And so the understanding of each variety and how it's nuanced every year is fundamental for me to making cider. but it's also not just fundamental for me, it's fundamental for everyone who works with me, because they have to understand how my thought process is for creating blends. They've got to understand what it is that I'm wanting to do with the fruit, and they've got to understand the right fruit to do the right things with. So it's not just me and a personal thing. It's something that everybody has to understand who's helping make Oliver's cider. And that sometimes is actually easier said than done, but actually also sometimes it's a wonderful aid, because I don't always get it right, and sometimes you need somebody to prompt you and say, "Steady on, have you considered this?" or something similar.
Has there ever been a point of contention over a variety like that, where you've been sort of spearheaded one way and everyone else is going the other way?
It comes down to how sometimes you get more focused in terms of the way you're going to use varieties of apple, and you actually have reached the end stage ahead of actually the blend having got there. So sometimes there's a tendency to not overthink it, but think you've sort of got somewhere, where in actual fact, if you just tweak something or change something a little bit, you'll actually end up in a much better place. And obviously, I like to feel that I'm the one that's going to lead the charge there, but that's not quite often the case.
When you say tweak something or change something, what are some of those tweaks and changes that you utilize to manipulate it, or make it the way you want it?
So if you look at a cider, the composition of it is based around the sweetness, the residual sweetness, the dryness in the sense of either the sweetness and the dryness, or the tannins and the astringency and the bitterness and the resulting dryness that gives you in the mouth. You've got the acidity, which has to traditionally balance the sweetness, but it also performs, I think, quite a crucial job in balancing or matching the tannins. And sometimes people go, "Well, look, I've got the sugar and the acid balanced, but it just doesn't taste right, doesn't feel right," and that'll be because there's a third party that's not showing as it should do. And so all the time when you're putting a blend together, all these things are going on, and you're trying to understand that if you put too much acid in, then you might try and compensate with adding some more sugar back if you're adding sugar, or you might think, this is a really overstated drink. And why is it overstated? It may be because the tannins are totally out of sync with the acidity and the sweetness. There's all these things going on, and we haven't even considered the aromatics. We haven't considered all the phenolics and all the minor little characteristics that are going to be playing a part in the overall blend. But the foundation of the blend is that acid, sugar, tannin balance for me.
Tom, just for the benefit of our listeners who are relatively new to cider, you are in a part of the world where there are the apples that are classically grown to make cider, rather technically called cider apples, contain quite a lot of tannin, which is what you would get in, let's say, red wine or tea and coffee. And it's what provides this mouthfeel, this astringent that you talked about, the mouth drying effect, potentially some sort of woody bitterness as well. And far fewer apples are sort of zingy and fresh, which is the sort of the acid component character. There are some, which I'm sure we will talk about in a little bit, but they're quite different from, let's say, dessert apples, eating apples, those that are grown specifically sort of for eating. So it's one of the great things about cider, and one of the things that is, I know that people from the south and west of England are particularly proud about, is that these really bold, tannic, earthy ciders. So they are quite different, aren't they, from those other kinds of apples?
Yeah, they are quite different. And though we probably still are, in terms of volume, making a heck of a lot of cider with those apples as part of the the ingredient list. I have a feeling that the humble dessert apple is really playing a big part in a lot of the cider being made around the world at the moment. And I do take my hat off to everybody who is creating a really good cider when you've really got just acid and sugar or no sugar to play with. You might feel the need to bring in some other accomplices to help you create something of worth. But at the same time, I think the art of cider making is all about the apple. And there's some people making some stunningly good ciders from dessert fruit. And I think one of the keys is the opportunity with fruit like that is the aroma. And that's where you can show us traditional West Country style cider makers the door. Our aromatics quite often can be a little bit challenging, and there's a really lovely opportunity with a more simple apple with a fruit forward aromatics that a lot of these cultured yeasts are encouraging nowadays. So I think it is now a very exciting world of cider because it's a big world.
Absolutely. And so tell us a little bit about the apple varieties that form the bedrock of your production. Give us some names and some highlights of what these apples are all about in your obviously brief, succinct way.
I'm going to have to use code words for the apples because I'm very, very worried that people are going to go out and try and mimic the ciders I make if I tell them the varieties, and it's going to frustrate them because it's probably not going to work. So, my favourite apple from the bittersweet. Do we need to talk about bittersweet, bitter sharp, and sweet?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We're here. Yeah.
Is Andrew Lee on the programme?
He hasn't. Andrew Lee has not been on the program as yet. We might try and get you.
Okay.
We might try and get him in the future.
Okay, but in the meantime, I'm going to tell you. So, it classically, and Andrew Lee was part of this decision. They decided at Long Ash and at Bristol that the easiest way to tell people about cider apples was to break it down into 4 sort of families of cider apple. One was the sweet cider apple, and that was where it was predominantly just the sugars in the apple that was the character of the apple that they were most interested in. Then there was the bitter sharp apple, and that is the apple that has tannins and acid, and obviously it has some sugar, but its feature was the tannins and the acid. Then there's bittersweet, and bittersweet is tannins and sugars. Not that the acid was non-existent, but it was not the featured part. And then the third one is the sharp apple, and that is one where the acids are featured ahead of the sugars and the tannins. And those 4 families of apple are what covers all the apples of the cider world.
Now, I'm not quite sure how old you think Dr. Andrew Lee is, but that classification was actually created by BTP Barker in 1905. So unless the eminent Dr. Andrew Lee is, 150 years old, I mean, who wouldn't want to be 150 years old? The original classification was done over a century ago.
All right. Well, I think you've. I've been rumbled, but I did say that I said to Andrew I would give him a plug. All right.
Has he got a book out? He does. Bloody hell.
Yeah. And
third edition. How does somebody get a 3rd edition? I can't believe it.
But Gabe, it's due to your fastidious use of Google that I am now able to say that for all the facts on cider and cider making, please read Andrew Lee's book and look at his website. Don't believe a word of what I'm going to say. Okay.
Is his book called The Ciderologist? Is that?
It's called Craft Cider Making, and there is a cider book worth purchasing. Anybody who is interested in starting to make cider on a very small scale or even a slightly larger scale, it is a fantastic guide. Anyway, moving on. So you've got this range. You've got this range of bittersweet, bitter sharp, sweet and sharp apples available to you. What are the key ones for you?
Okay, so the key one is the apple from the mill at Yarlington. Okay, now I think for those of you in the know, you can work out what it is. For those of you who have got not making any attempt to make it cider, the apple's called the Yarlington Mill. I think it's a really, really good apple. It's one that in any number of tasting opportunities we've done, people are drawn to it. They can't always tell you why, but certainly ciders with a good proportion of Yarlington Mill are very acceptable to people in the general run of things. I love it. I love it. It's got a lovely floral aspect to it. The tannins are soft and long, and the mouthfeel is fantastic, and it's very, very pliable. So great apple. The second bittersweet that I use a heck of a lot of is Dabinet. That's a classic cider apple, and one that I think is probably the most widely grown cider apple in the UK. And the third apple in the triumvirate of this is if you're talking about songwriting, this is like the status quo version of cider making for me. All right, it's 3 chords, it's 3 apples, so it's Dabinet, Yarlington Mill, and Foxwell for the acidity. Okay, so that's that. I mean, that's all you need to know. You can have hit after hit with those 3.
So with your fruit, are you getting that from your own orchard, someone else's, or a mixture of both? And has that been affected by the coronavirus and current events, Tom?
Well, to go to your last point first, when I'm working it nowadays, it feels like I've been affected by the coronavirus, because I feel like I'm working in some sort of glue, that my speed of work is really slow, my energy levels are quite low, and I'm just thinking, surely it used to be easier than this. And maybe it was, but maybe it's the coronavirus that slowed me up. What was your first question, Martyn? What was the first part of that?
he does have this effect.
Shall we try that again? Yeah. First off, let's just say it might be age and not a virus that you might or might not have had. You can't blame a fucking pandemic for your joints aching. But
I thought that was one of the side effects. I mean, I've been listening to an awful lot of the radio lately, and I'm very good at gleaning side effects from things. Okay. So anyway, the question was.
So the question was, do you get those mixture of apples? Do you get them from your own orchard or someone else's, a blend of both? And has that sort of harvesting been affected?
No. This year, every year is unique. So I only grow about 10% of my own fruit, though actually now I'm picking it. I think I might be growing about 15 to 20% of my own fruit this year, because I'm doing such a good job getting the fruit in before it gets rotten and anything, that it's looking good. We buy in larger amounts of varieties that I love. So we buy in Foxwell too, we buy in Yarlington too, we buy in Dabinet. We also look after orchards for people and have the fruit from that. I like to pay people good money, because if they're growing good fruit, it's in everybody's interest to keep these orchards going. Though, to be honest, the amount of fruit I use isn't really going to provide any one individual with a luxury lifestyle. But at the same time, if you're a mixed farm, it's a useful addition at a time of year when you've finished all the other work, and harvesting some fruit seems like a good idea. I love it when people grow all their own fruit, but I'm going to advocate that there's a couple of advantages from not doing that. One is you don't have to do any of the work, and the other one, it spreads the risk. So in terms of things like frost, biennialism, and just disease or pests or whatever, if you've got a number of different people providing you with fruit, then you're spreading your risk, you're evening out biennialism, and you generally find it easier to get whatever you think you might need every year. Obviously, there's other things too, like you have to pay for it, and sometimes things don't go quite as you would like. But this is the world that I'm in, and I'm making the most of it, I think.
So with some of your ciders that show off single variety and some that are blends, what are ones that if you were to say to someone, I've got a single variety and I've got a blend, what would you want them to pick up out of your selection?
Oh, well, so I don't really claim to make any single varietals. I'm trying to think. The Dabinet is a single varietal. I'm quite careful on my labeling. So even if my cider says, for instance, Yarlington Mill, the Yarlington contribution will be 95%, and there'll be a 5% of Foxwhelp in there to give it some balance. It doesn't actually state that on the label, but I think it says it on my website somewhere under the About section.
Just bury it in there.
No,
full transparency.
I think. Well, Martyn, you say bury, but to be honest, I feel that there's only so much information people want when they're opening a bottle of cider. My hope is that they're going to drink it, and then when they've drunk it, if they really need to know what's in it, if they go to the website, they can find out. And if they can't, I'll have to work through the night and update the site with this requisite information.
I believe the last Yarlington Mill I had from you, was that the one that had like a little bit of like peat at the end, a little bit of smoke?
You are talking about not the current vintage that is on sale, but you're talking about the previous vintage from 2017, I think. And you're very right. That had some nuance, or for some people, a massive clout of the whiskey barrel that it had been in. Yeah.
But so with that, you were the label says like the main feature of it, but it was a blend and it wasn't a single variety as such.
As I say, hardly any of my ciders are single varietals. The Blakeney Red is a single varietal. I don't actually say that on it, I don't think, but because I don't want to mislead people. But if it says Blakeney Red, you can pretty much say it's the featured variety, and it is 100% Blakeney actually. But who cares?
But this happens in beer as well, where it's like a Citra hop pale. You can use other hops to kind of like even out the balance. You'd rather have something that's balanced and drinkable than have something that's 100% of one product and just be a little bit missing.
Yeah. I mean, if you did really want to know, that I had a cough on January the 2nd, and and my bowels were irritable throughout February. If that was going to help you understand the Yarlington, then I'd put that down as well. But it really won't. For me, the evidence is really in the cider, and as you know, I will happily tell anyone about what I've done and put into it, because usually it's very simple. So,
and you'll do it in third person usually.
Yeah.
Well, they will. Tom Oliver will.
Tom will.
He would, but he's unavoidably detained doing a podcast at the moment.
Poor bugger. I've got a quick question about Foxwhelp. It's amazing how, and maybe it's just a very small cider bubble that I live in, and don't actually get out into the real world enough. But there's a little bit of a buzz and a bit of vogue in small cider circles within the UK around this apple, which is a beautiful apple. It's an old apple, it's got a 400-year plus heritage of being written about, and it's a bit sharp. So it's got tannin and it's got acidity. In fact, it's got quite a lot of acidity. And I know that for you, it's a really important variety as the key element that's providing fruitiness and acidity into a blend. There are some that do it as a single variety. What is your thoughts on Foxwell as a single variety?
I find it really hard to remember just how I've termed my thoughts on this. But one of the things I've said is that it's like being hit over the head with a baseball bat. You remember it, but you don't really want to. I just think that it's too much shock and awe. It's not what the Foxwell apple is really good at. The Foxwell apple is really good at providing a counterpoint to sweetness or to floralness or to tannins, to give you some bracing to something that's a bit flabby, or it can give you the zing and the floral top notes on something. It's just the master at it. But I don't know. You can use all these analogies of choirs and all that, but it's for me. It's a blending apple. I'm obviously, if people like Foxwell in a bottle, it's not that hard to do.
Well, I mean, you've done one. You actually have a single variety of Foxwell yourself, do you not? In fact,
no. That's the other bloke. That's the Tom Oliver.
Tom Oliver with a Y. Yes, that's it. Yeah.
It's
Tom Oliver.
It's him. And I mean, I tried to reason with him, but you do one podcast and people get above themselves. So I'm just trying to steady him down. He said, "Look, if people want it, give it to the people." And I said, "Well, look, we are doing this barrel room series. This is a great opportunity for you to do something that you said you wouldn't do." And he agreed with me, and so that's what we did.
Bravo. Could I make a suggestion that as your next single variety could be the Dimmock Red? I do hear that it's a wonderful apple, and that the people who grew up in that village are equally as bitter sharp as well, quite possibly. So
he's shaking his head.
To be honest, it really will appeal to the fundraising side of my organisation. And I'm sure that we could do some sort of charity thing for these Dimmock.
It is in the impoverished county of Gloucestershire, a long way away from Oakle Pitchard.
I've always thought that maybe people from Dimmock were indecisive. And you're probably going to ask me, well, why do you think this, Tom? And I'm going to say, I think it's because have they not got both an apple and a pear called the Dimmock Red?
I think you will find actually that it goes one step further, and there is a Dimmock Red plum as well. We are the only village in the world with the top fruited triumvirate. And on that note, we should just close the whole podcast now. It doesn't get any better than that, does it? Really?
Do you mention this in Ciderology, or is this book 2?
No, I really do mention it in chapter 1. That is as good as that.
Chapter 1.
That must be where I read it.
Yeah. Well, I'm
so you just did the first chapter as well. That's all. I didn't get past the first one.
It was the one with the most bitches in, so I don't blame you.
The most bitches.
Pictures. Sorry, I'm not enunciating properly. I'm from Glastonbury. It's in Dimmock. Dimmock Red with a Y, actually. It is, yeah.
Dimmock with a Y. Right, so I have not a question, Tom, but we're gonna play a little game with you and Gabe. Are you game?
I am
always game.
Let's do it.
So we don't have a name for this game yet. Well, I'm not really very creative with words. Martyn,
I'll tell you what. Describe it. I'll name it.
Kind of what I hope would happen. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out. So it's basically what I read out. Is it an apple variety or is it a band?
Okay.
All right. I'm up for this.
It could be both if you've been really clever.
A little
He hasn't
spoiler
been that
here,
clever,
Tom.
don't
I
we?
haven't been that clever, but you never know. I didn't sort of cross search every single one.
So winter banana-rama is not coming up then.
Oh, that is so clever.
So bad.
That is brilliant. But it's not wonderful. Okay, come on then, Grant. Hit it.
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, do we have a name for this, Martin? Come on.
Also,
what was the title?
yeah. I believe it's called Dolphin Horses. Is it a band or an apple?
Yes. And
I mean, yeah.
And here comes the theme tune. So I'm going to do. I'll do 5 each,
That's
right?
the animal.
Okay.
I think I don't know how easy this is going to be, but let's go with Gabe first. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So is this an? Oh, so I've got pears in here as well. So apple, pear, Pomme or band, shall we say? So your first one.
Well, don't rename it.
Yeah. What was it called? Dolphin, horse, Pomme or band. Yeah, cool.
That'll do.
So
Yeah.
your first one, Gabe. Bastard sack.
Ooh. Surely this game is Pomme, band, or rather nasty infection. I'm going. It's a fruit. It's an apple.
Ooh. Tom, you want to interject here? You got your hand up.
Yeah, it's a peri pear.
It's a peri pear. Of course.
Oh, Gabe, you lost, baby.
Sack. I've got the sack.
You've got to imagine. You've got to imagine going into a record store and going into the little black metal section, and you're flicking through. There's a bit of Mortis, there's a bit of Doom synth, and all this, and you pull out what's it? Bastard sack. So if you describe the situation of like that, or would you take it from a tree and press bastards?
Yeah.
What would the kind of liquid that would come out of a bastard?
Tom, have you ever pressed bastard sack, Tom?
No, but I did once get my privates caught in the
So moving on.
Is that where the extra 5% that got added to the Arlington Mill came from? Like,
to be honest, you judged it as the best in show at the Cider Museum, Gabe. So I just felt it justified it.
I did wonder where that je ne sais quoi came from.
Yeah.
So technically,
all right, come on.
You said fruit, so I'm going to give you a half a point.
Oh, okay, that's very generous of you. Thank you.
Okay, so Tom.
Yeah. Pressure's on.
Ruby throat.
Ooh.
They only had an EP. 2 EPs from Slovenia.
I'm desperately trying to get away from the reasons Gabe's been to see his doctor in the last 12 months, but I'm struggling. I've never heard of the fruit, so I'm going to have to go with band.
You are correct, Tom. Ruby throat.
Oh.
Let me have a look at.
Tell me about
I'm
them.
just trying to find the tab. Ruby Throat is a British neo-folk musical duo formed in 2007 by English vocalist Katie Jane Garside and American guitarist Chris Whittingham. They've recorded 3 studio albums, the first one being called The Ventriloquist. That's about as interesting as I think it gets.
Don't laugh at someone's artistic integrity, Gabe. Ruby
Associated
Throat.
acts, Queen Adrena. I remember Queen Adrena. Anyone else? No. Okay. Right, Gabe.
Yes.
Pomme or band? Screeching Weasel.
Ooh, I'd like to think that was an apple or a pear. Do you know what? It's probably some kind of bloody quince, isn't it? But I am gonna go. I'm gonna go band.
Tom?
I think it's Martyn Sharman's new band.
Screeching Weasel.
Is that?
It's all instrumental.
Well,
I won't take that against my fucking voice, Tom. Don't come for me, baby. You won't win this war, I tell you that. Fucking hell. Go on,
let's go.
Tell us, Grant.
Let's.
Pomme.
It is an apple. But do you know what? I mean, it might be slightly unfair. It's from this new proceedings from the first annual Wild and Seedling Pomological Exhibition by Matt Kaminsky. Pomme Queen from Instagram.
I say Matt is a phenomenal guy. Gabe and me met him out at Franklin Counties. His attention to detail and his enthusiasm for finding apples and wild apples is phenomenal.
And for his ability to come up with obscure names as well.
Oh, do you know what? I should have read the description here because it says named for a punk rock band whose trademark name and raspy vocal style calls to mind the feeling of one's if this variety is eaten fresh. Shit.
There we go.
There we go.
I fucked that one up, didn't I?
Oh yes. You only had
I'm really
to
sorry, guys. Should have interjected. That's actually my band.
So technically, you got that wrong, Gabe. So that's 0 points. Right, moving on. We're going to go to you, Tom, and we're going to say gay dad.
Well, have I ever used that apple? I'm going to go for band.
And anyone else?
Meddler. I think it's a meddler.
Well, he might be, but it's it's a band. Tom, well done.
It's not a meddler.
So no, it's two points to Tom, half a point to Gabe currently.
See, I'm not a musicologist or a poemologist. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so
how about we make the last round?
We'll do one more each. One more each. One more. Right, Gabe, you ready?
Yes.
Natalie Portman's shaved head.
Well, I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? It's an apple. Everyone knows it's an apple. I harvested some from a Somerset orchard by hand, stroking each apple very tenderly, actually, before it went into the bucket. So, yeah, it's apple.
I'm afraid you're wrong, Gabe.
Oh, gee.
A band who chose their band name on a whim when we were still in high school. Now, that's a surprise. Turns out it wasn't. They didn't think.
A fan of V for Vendetta.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Tom, one more.
I've got to say now, obviously, Grant, you put a huge amount of effort and time into doing this quiz. And obviously, the competitive me just won't stop at not giving a correct answer if possible.
So we're going to keep going until you get one wrong.
My opponent's not really taking this as seriously as I'd hoped he would.
That's not true.
Not
true.
I should have said.
I was right until the point that it was actually, mathematically impossible for me to win. And then I threw in the towel like a bit of a bitch.
No. I will say, Tom, he's been researching gay dads all week. I've seen his safari history.
Right.
It's littered with it.
Well, okay.
I didn't mention the prize. I didn't mention the prize being a copy of Ciderology, first edition.
Oh well, if it's dead,
maybe
a signed copy. I hope.
Oh, fantastic!
Are any of them unsigned?
Because I was at.
Those that not got out of the warehouse, yes, I've not had access yet. And our producers has not been signed either. Sorry, Scott. I'll send one out to you, mate. Don't worry.
That does make Scots a little more valuable than most of them. Yeah,
it is true. There aren't any doodles in the front.
It's brand new, not used like new. That's what it'll be on Amazon if you buy it with a signed copy. Damaged. Nearly new.
I have no words. No words.
Yeah. I think you have, because book 2's coming.
It is. Oh,
you didn't even need to plug that yourself. Wow.
Well, it's still not even guaranteed. Like there has to have enough pre-orders in order to launch. So I won't say anything just yet.
Man, that's going to be embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not self-publishing.
You're going to get loads of credit cards, Gabe.
Or no more than I already have. Thank you very much. I am able to go to the odd Dutch bank to get an account. Anyway, moving quickly on.
Right. The last one.
Final one.
Okay, let me speak. Let the host this immense quiz show speak. So your last one, Pomme or band, is Clipper Dick.
I actually know his cousin, Tettenhall Dick. And
you saw them at Tea in the Park, right?
Oh, no. Oh, I did, in the dance tent. But they were off stage then.
When you were hanging out with Bastard
they
Sack.
said they were friends.
You and Bastard Sack.
Yeah. I think they. Yeah. Anyway, they.
Clipper Dick.
Yeah, it's without a doubt. I mean, everyone knows it's a fruit, and it's probably a pear.
It's a pear. Correct, Tom. Well done. 3 out of 3.
Look at that. He is. What chance does any mortal man have against Tom and his Clipper Dick? It's just.
Yeah. And his bastard sack.
No chance at all. Well, Mr. Oliver, I bow down graciously at your feet, and I'm very happy that you won that, so that we can end this painful session where I've lost most terribly. But Tom Oliver, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing with us all of your pearls of wisdom and all of your knowledge around these wonderful and amazing apple and pear varieties that go into making your wonderful drinks, and all of those from the Shire and beyond. So many thanks to you, sir. So continuing with the single variety theme, we have some cider's been sent to us from Sxollie, which is it's a South African brand, and this is a single variety golden delicious cider. Chaps, shall we open it up and see what we think?
Pouring that right into your microphone, Gabe. It's brilliant.
Just to get the sound effects.
Love it.
So, for anybody who hasn't heard of Sxollie before, it's actually an English guy and his South African wife who established the brand. The cider is made in South Africa in the Elgin Valley, which is just outside Cape Town. Big apple growing, big winemaking area as well. And they have the cider made, and there are different single varieties. This is the Golden Delicious. They also have a Granny Smith. And they also have a Crips Pink, which is the unbranded name for Pink Lady. And they're also just about to bring back in their Perry once again. And the cider it's fermented dry, and then it's back sweetened with juice of that variety. So it is 100% juice. The ABV sits at 4.5%. It is not going to be a cider that is equivalent of what, let's say, Tom Oliver makes, because this is one of those ciders, as he was describing, as a dessert apple variety where freshness and aromatics are key. What do we think?
Well, just straight off, I poured it out for a comedically long time that didn't get any laughs, but that's fine. But poured it out and it burst right out of the glass onto my nose, and it is just crunching into a Golden Delicious, which is, I know it does exactly what it says on the tin, but it does a bloody good job of it. Like, it's so fresh and vibrant. It's a little banger. And I did I was a speaker at that Imbibe event, thanks to Susanna for getting me on that from the other podcast. But I showcased this as a cider that in the portfolio because of that, in that it just does exactly what it says on the tin, bang on.
Yep, I love it. I think there's my enthusiasm again, Martyn. You like that?
Yeah.
You can't do it. You're too enthusiastic about life. You have to get a bit more jaded, and then you'll be there.
It'll come in time.
I love this. No,
what did you do an accent?
I didn't do an accent.
I love this, Martyn. I love this. Golden Delicious. My name's Grant Hutchison, and I just love the Golden Delicious. Grant, is that you? Yeah, I am just drinking Golden Delicious.
I'm so tired.
Crafty. Tell us what you fucking think about it.
It's perfect for just opening a bottle when you're having your dinner or having a barbecue, or just sitting having a chat with some pals. No chin scratching, no let's break down the complexities of this guy. Just open it and drink it. I think it'd be a good introduction to, a full juice, well-made ciders that are maybe a bit more challenging, but this one you don't really need to think about, which I think is why it's so great. Mainly I'd be looking for. Go on, you go.
Oh, sorry. I was saying I use this cider a lot in tasting sessions because it does perfectly exemplify what these fresh, fruity, aromatic ciders are all about. This is not something that anybody who's into their big, bold, earthy, tannic ciders this is not going to be their cup of tea. And that's absolutely fine, because it is about trying to showcase the amazing range and diversity of different styles that are out there, and going back to the $500,000 projects to try and provide some language to understanding what these different drinks are, so that people can go into supermarkets, into bars, and say, not just I want to get a cider today, that maybe I want to have an acid-driven cider or an aromatic cider, or rather than a bold, earthy kind of tannic cider. I think it's absolutely perfect for what it's supposed to be, and it'll get people into cider maybe who didn't drink it before, who were into aromatic white wines, because it provides something that maybe they haven't tried before. And the fact that it's available in the supermarkets too is really, really important. It's available in Sainsbury's in the UK, and that's so important to be able to reach a wide range of consumers.
I will say as well, it's with a lot of these kind of ciders, my preconception is always the sweetness is going to be there quite upfront, but this does a really good job of balancing it with the acid as well. So it mimics what eating that apple variety is like in a drink, so much so that a gulp, you just keep going. So I'm purposefully trying to go slow here while I mock Grant's enthusiasm.
I've already had 3. So I'm definitely I'm with you there on the continual drinking of it. It's very easy just to keep taking another sip.
This is obviously go on.
I was just going to say sometimes the back sweetening with juice is something that I'm not always a fan of. But when you're looking for a cider like this in a 330ml bottle that's supposed to be kind of more sessionable, then that's exactly what it's for, and it's perfect for that. It's quite often it can mask what's actually there in the dry cider, but that's not what these guys are going for. So it's totally perfect for that.
Exactly. It's not a bold, dry cider. It's not. It's never designed for it. It's not, and it's not obviously ever going to be able to do that. It's just fresh. It's fruity. It's enjoyable. Fantastic. And did you know that South Africa is the world's second largest producer and consumer of cider after the UK?
Really?
I did, Gabe. Where did I learn that?
You might have learned it. You might have learned it in Ciderology by Gabe Cook. Available now, new and used. I don't care. Please, please, please purchase my book. Thank you very much. Thank you, Grant. That's very kind.
What's good with this one is...
And I was going to say, do they not have what's their juice content? Is it really low or really high? I can't remember this. So I did it. I should remember this because it was on your course through South Africa.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember that.
Let me look it up. You guys chat. I'll look it up.
So I was going to say that with a lot of the ciders that I seek out, that there's a lot of nuance, and with the aromatics, you're picking up certain other flavors, like definitely giving off like strawberry, raspberry kind of vibes sometimes when used right. What's amazing with this one though is it's just so big on apple. It's actually impressively straight up appley.
80% apple juice content. Just
there you go.
Pretty good, right?
So going back to conversations about how apples can be utilized, that's more than double what the minimum juice content is for the UK. And I'm not necessarily saying that everything has to be super prescriptive, but that's definitely heading in the right direction. I certainly feel that something north of 50%. You want to at least have majority of apples in your cider. Surely, I would have thought so. Anyway, this one is 100% because it is just the fermented apple and then the juice off that variety blended back in to create, as Martyn said, the impression of biting straight into that apple, which is absolutely what they're trying to do. So there we go. Sxollie, Golden Delicious, available across the UK in Sainsbury's stores. Go and check them out. Fantastic. Oh, and just out of interest, Sxollie it's spelled Sxollie.
Why?
And that's Afrikaans. There's no Y. And you pronounce it Sxollie, which is Afrikaans, which means scallywag, like a hustler, like a street hustler. So that's
that's very interesting. I like that.
I'm full of it. Actually, and I just forgot, remember, that Sxollie is also my featured cider maker from South Africa too, in Ciderology, available now. Thank you very much. Good night. And so on to our final section for the show. It is the listeners' questions, where Martyn, Grant, and I get to act as three hairy agony aunts. What a terrible thought that is. But people do want to ask questions of us, and so we will obviously give us our honest answers. First up, the legendary Albert Johnson from the Ross on Wye Cider and Perry Company says, "How big can dry cider go?" What do we think, people?
Well, Ross at the Was on the whole Ross. Why? With a Y.
There was a Y. With a Y.
There was a Y in there somewhere.
Yeah.
It was on the Y.
So, Albert, I think you know as well as anyone, seeing as you produce such fine ones, but it's really down to getting it into the right hands, because there's some lovely ciders that just sit on shelves that are huge and dry, and then there are some that just absolutely fly. So, guys, how big can it go? Big?
I don't think. Obviously, I don't think that dry, if he means literally with no sugar, and if there is with the combination of the boldness of tannins that the likes of Albert makes with his ciders, we're talking really big, intense drinks that are never going to be mainstream. But the thing is that because the cider market is so big in the UK, 783 million litres of cider was sold in the UK in 2019. If just 5%, 3%, 2% of that was bone dry cider, that would be a massive increase upon what it is currently. So everything is kind of relative. And I do have faith that there is this burgeoning interest amongst a range of non-pre-existing cider drinkers that they are going to come to cider. And one of the things they're going to really enjoy is the revelation that cider does not have to be sweeter, that you can get real, intense character without a diminishment of body or flavor by there being an absence of sugar. So I think it is going to grow. It's from a pretty small base right now. But I do think that it's going to have a role to play in sort of cider's resurgence.
And Grant, you sell it at restock, like restock. It's like a pun play on puns.
Don't forget the colon.
There's a colon in there as well. Yeah, thanks.
Every
Gabe.
colon's talk. So yeah, you sell dry cider. Like, how out of your ranges at Ricolon Stalk, how do the dry end of it sell comparatively?
I mean, the majority of it is dry anyway. So I mean, I don't have many sweet ones, but I guess it's more about the way I see it is where does it sell, and I think that's something to focus on with dry cider is a good, where's the best place to get it into people's hands, and it's probably not in an off-license situation where, as you said, it might just sit on shelves, and if they've not got an opportunity to try it, people might not take a punt on a £15 bottle of cider. I personally try and get those bottles into restaurants that where the staff are selling wines by the glass, or they're pairing wines with dishes, and somewhere that has staff with the enthusiasm for cider that they can do the same with cider as they do with wine, and therefore it's less of a big thing if it's on a menu that says, oh, you can get this dish, you can have a glass of cider, or you can have a glass of wine with it. People might be like, oh fuck it, I'll have a glass of wine, a glass of cider instead.
Inertia there kicking in. No, I'll definitely have the wine.
So yeah, I think that's where the focus, well, certainly for me, and probably should be at the moment, is if you want dry cider to compete with sweeter ciders or wine or beer, then I think getting it into restaurants and changing the way people think about how they drink it is the best way to do it, and having it with food and having it in that setting, I think makes the most sense.
Well, the dry end of cider is it actually sounds counterintuitive, but it's a really good entry level for some people who are just used to the big commercial sweeter ciders, because it's so different. It stands out. A lot of people come to cider that's branded as craft and sold as this new thing, but really it's just a small person doing big style commercial ciders, and having something that's by a small producer, say like Little Pomona, Oliver's, Once Upon a Tree, those are the ones that I've shown family members that they've been like blown away by because it's so different. So it's actually like the dry end is banging for that kind of like showing you what it can be.
And also I think this, maybe comes back to the chat we were having about language as well, and the word dry itself has just become sort of become a category but then within that, you've got so many different ciders that you could describe as dry, but that are completely different. And I think that's a challenge as well. That like you said, a dry cider from Little Pomona, if you had their Egremont Russet, it's going to be very, very different from, Enter the Dragon. Both are technically dry ciders,
If only there was an instant doing research into these categories. If there was a book someone could read that would break this down further. But alas. What's the next question?
Next question from Cider Boy Blair from Little Pomona. He claims this is a serious question. Does cider make you pee more than drinking other alcohol?
Well, I mean, would you not say it's dependent on how much you drink of it? If you're someone like Blair who works at a cidery,
I'm assuming he's the question would be like for like. So if I drink a litre of cider and a litre of wine and a litre of beer, not all in one night, because then you're going to piss a lot, but over 3 nights, would I piss more on the night that I drank a litre of cider than when I drank a litre of beer?
What's the protein content for cider comparatively to beer? Because beer is mainly a lot of sugar and enzymes and proteins that I can imagine you'd retain. I don't know.
Cider has considerably fewer proteins than beer. So
there you go. You're pissing proteins.
But it is a fair question, because there are certain drinks which have stronger diuretic properties than others. So caffeine, for example, has got a sort of really high diuretic factor and will make you pee considerably more than drinks that don't contain caffeine. So I suppose it's whether it's the amount of alcohol, or maybe the type of alcohol, possibly, does that make you pee more? It certainly makes you pee smell of apples if it's a relatively full juice cider, which is
is that
quite
right?
Pleasant on occasion.
Wow,
It must have had a nice apple floral pee on occasion.
I thought you were going to say on a person there. No, I haven't.
You said that, not me, Grant. There you go.
No, I haven't. I did once try and test the asparagus thing.
Yeah. Once you've had that, you have it for life. But before you have it, if you pee after eating asparagus and it doesn't smell like it, there might come a point where you eat asparagus and then pee. And once you've got to that point, you can't ever go back. Like, your pee will smell like that every time you have asparagus.
But then, is there not a theory that it's actually whether or not you can smell it? So,
all I know is I saw that on QI and I thought that sounds quite interesting, and I just retained that half factoid. So
yeah, bit Carl Pilkington there.
So I think that
that's where the comparisons end.
Welcome to the Neutral Science Hotel here, and I think that ultimately the answer that we need to give to Blair there is
sounds good.
That's about it, probably. So
all right.
So for our final question of the evening, Martyn, what have we got?
So Belle and Heather Bridal, they sent this on Instagram, I believe, to Grant, but they said, "What's the difference between fine cider and bog standard cider?"
What of the standard of a bog, of a toilet? Is that what it's trying to say?
I think they're saying why when I buy wines that are supplied by Ricolon's Talk is the price higher? Like, what? How can you justify the price? Yeah, apple fines. That's my inertia again.
How can I justify the price?
But in all seriousness, all right, Grant, you're the one flogging it. What makes you sell that above selling, say, bog standard cider?
I mean, the honest truth is someone else is already doing that, and no one. Well, not no one. There are fewer people selling fine cider. That's the the first truthful answer. Going back to the actual question, what is the difference? For me, it's a question of skill and craft, which the cider maker utilizes to make that cider, and with the cider that's made on a larger scale, it's very much done to formula so that it tastes the same or as close to the same every bottle and every year as possible. Whereas that's not the case with your smaller craft producers. That would be my interpretation of it. Time as well is probably another big one. Takes a long time. Well, can take a long time to make cider, and if you're not doing on a large scale, which is another reason for a bottle of little Pomona being more expensive than a bottle of Aspel. And again, it's it's down to your opinion as well. Bog standard versus fine. It's what you like,
I was just doing some research into the etymology of bog standard, and it does indeed come from a course, sort of 19th century term relating to being like that of the shitter. Apparently, it says. So there we go.
All right, okay.
Very good.
So what's your take on the shitter versus the finer side of things, Gabe? What makes the difference?
It's a good question. Apples, the quantity of apple juice that goes in has to have some kind of bearing, but that doesn't necessarily make it fine. I suppose the question is, what is a fine cider? And this is something that we're in the conversation of. It's something that is made with time and care and endeavor, that's trying to tell something special. It is a fact that a lot of them do come in a 750ml bottle because they're trying to upweight the value perception by trying to get it perceived more in a wine-like consumption by the glass to savor it, because it has undergone these kind of processes, rather than being in a pack and a format that is quick and easy, single-use kind of drinking. It's also a little bit about the pricing. I don't think you could call a fine wine something that's 3 for £10 down at Bargain Booze. So it's really, really challenging, especially because we're talking about things that have no definitions. But it's just like craft beer. When it is, when a beer is a craft beer, even if there are no definables. It is attitude, what it's doing, what it's saying, who it's appealing to, and how it's going about it. That's what I reckon.
Cool. Yeah. So for me, I like the biggest attribute when I'm looking for a cider like that, and why I would go for a fine cider as opposed to a bog standard one, is I guess the maker's intentions. Because there's sometimes where I've had a really good cider makers basically attempt at making something light, refreshing, easy. Sxollie's a great example right now of something that's like a craft producer doing something that's like just for drinking consumption. But it's what makes it exciting is someone pushing boundaries for themselves, expressing something with the land and their chosen fruit, and making something that does stand out. And it isn't replicatable, really. And it's just exciting having that. And if it tastes amazing, it's a winner. And I guess you drink those recreationally rather than medicinally to just get pissed on. You wouldn't drink that on a roundabout. That's what I'm doing.
Very well said. What can we say? Sorry.
Was that a question?
That was.
What can we say? We've ran out. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Neutral Cider Hotel just closing quickly.
Yeah, we've been shut down by environmental health.
We just sorry, no staff on here. Ran out.
The bogs are quite standard, and they're backlogged. We need to get the night porter in. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Neutral Cider Hotel is closed for another evening. We're chucked out of the bar onto the street, trying to find our way home. It's been a great pleasure. So please, obviously, from me, Gabe Cook, Dubai Ciderology, keep letting me have baked beans on toast every night so that I can feed the slew of children that I've got. I don't really have any children. It's not true. Mr. Grant Hutchison, final words from you, my friend.
Thanks for joining us at the hotel. It's been great to see you all. Have a look at Restock. Oh, sorry, Recolon Stock. Oh no, there's no colon on my Instagram. Restock Cider on Instagram for new imports, new ciders that I'm selling to your local bar and restaurant. Go and pick some of them up because they're all fantastic.
Martyn, what wares are you hawking this evening?
So I am just being Grant again. No. And I'm saying go check out Cider Shit on Instagram.
It really is worth a look. And Neutral Cider Hotel is newly on the social media as well. Do check out Neutral Cider Hotel on Instagram and Neutral Cider Pod on Twitter. Any questions for the Agony Aunt, the listeners' questions, do put them in there. Otherwise, if you want to get in touch and start some conversations that you probably regret that you did start, that's the place to go. We will be seeing you next time. Thanks very much. Take it easy. Ciao. And wassail.
Bye.
Bye from Grant.
Bye.